there about smart power, which he says is a combination of hard power and soft power. And he says that effective leadership globally is going to require smart power. Now, the other reason why his book is super good is he goes chapter by chapter to talk about threats to U.S. hegemony, as well as ways that the U.S. will continue to maintain hegemony. So it's a really good 2011 book on this issue. What's the title? I think it's called Smart Power. Somebody will get out. Pardon? The Future of Power. All right, things that erode hegemony. The cost of maintaining hegemony can erode hegemony. This is the logic. Have y'all ever heard anybody talk about how the U.S. is like the Roman Empire in not good ways? Okay, this is the primary argument that they're making. When the Romans were the hegemon, they sent all their Roman people with the things on their helmets out and about into the world, and they established garrisons everywhere. There's a author by the name of Chalmers Johnson. He just died in the last year, but before he died, he wrote a series of books in which he drew some historical comparisons and said that the United States was going the way of the Romans, because when the Romans spread themselves too thin and spent so much money maintaining these far-flung garrisons, that eventually led to their own demise. So it wasn't that there was somebody else who was going to challenge them. They sowed the seeds of their own demise by trying to do too much, and the cost of maintaining all of that was really, really problematic. And so people like Chalmers Johnson make the argument that one of the things that will erode U.S. hegemony is the cost of maintaining. Did y'all read Michael O'Hanlon Evidence last year? Michael O'Hanlon? Okay, I'm sure that you did, because I'm convinced that this guy does not sleep, because O'Hanlon writes about everything, and he's super awesome, and it is my dream to meet him. So anyway, he writes about this sort of idea that budget overstretch is going to cost us stuff, and that it's going to force us to have to rein in our military. Lack of innovation, and I've got hubris up here. What does the word hubris mean?
Pride.
Yeah, too much pride, extreme pride. And so this lack of innovation / hubris argument is that if the United States continues to think that it is going to be the hegemon, then it basically rests on its laurels. Some of you right now are I am such a super awesome hedge debater. I do not need to listen to her and everything. So awesome. That is hubris. Okay, and so it also means that there's a lack of innovation that results from that, because there's no, sense of competition. Rise of other powers all on their own. This is also a point I want to make. The loss of U.S. hegemony, or things that erode U.S. hegemony, it's not all about us. It's not just decisions we make. Other countries make independent decisions. There's a set of countries called the BRIC countries. Does anyone know what BRIC is? Luke.
Brazil, Russia, India, China. They're the four countries that are going to, they're rising. They're the great power side. It's not superpower, but their rise is going to offset you.
Yeah, they're on the rise. So BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, those BRIC countries' economies are growing. Now, there is a question about whether or not the economic growth of BRIC countries will translate into military dominance. And so that's why you can still make arguments about why hedge is good or not good, because it's not like this is a foregone conclusion. BRIC countries are on the rise economically. Whether they choose to translate that into military power is a whole different question. But if those countries do rise, I would also add to this the EU. Current Greek financial crisis notwithstanding, the EU is super strong economy. They also have, prior to the set of economic troubles, they were doing a lot to try to integrate militarily as well, and to try to divorce themselves actually from NATO to create a European defense force. This may also be a challenge to the United States. And then the last thing I'll talk about that erodes hegemony are non-state actors. Non-state actors? What's a non-state actor? Terrorists, exactly. They could also, in a not terrorist kind of way, non-state actors might also be private corporations. Have y'all seen which which James Bond movie is it where the guy that does the Lexus commercials is the evil guy? Do you know what I'm talking about? Is it Goldfinger and he gets the like space satellite to like shoot things? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
James Bond? Yeah. Well, anyway, one of those ones with Pierce Brosnan in it is what I'm talking about, but I'll move on now. So private companies might actually also be a non-state actor. Non-governmental organizations, those might also be non-state actors that are affecting. All right, some people say hedge is good. The world is anarchic. Somebody needs to regulate. Might as well be us. This idea of hedge good, so awkward. That idea of hedge good, it rests upon the foundation of the idea of a benevolent hegemon. What does the word benevolent mean? Exactly, it means nice, just looking out for everybody, you know, it's all good. This idea that hedge is good rests upon benevolent hegemony. One of the effects that the war in Iraq in particular, less so Afghanistan, but the choice to go into Iraq, one of the things that did to U.S. hegemony is that it called into question whether or not the United States was a benevolent hegemon. Throughout the 1990s, the United States, existing in its unipolar moment, had intervened or contributed to interventions. Sometimes those were controversial, like when we intervened in Kosovo, but for the most part, the rest of the international community was like, well, even if we disagree with you, we were pretty sure that you're a benevolent hegemon. The war in Iraq, beginning in 2003, called that into question, and so that's why there was a lot more debate about why hedge is bad. Does that make sense to everyone? Yes. When Obama got elected in 2008, there was a sense that maybe there could be a, hey, let's go back to thinking the U.S. is a benevolent hegemon, but now the debate is like, we're too far gone, and that nobody really thinks that anymore, and so no matter who's the president, people will still view the United States differently. Assuming that the U.S. is a benevolent hegemon, or that somebody needs to regulate, and there are people, by the way, who would say hedge good, like Niall Ferguson would say hedge is good, not because the U.S. is like super awesome, benevolent, but because somebody needs to get in there and regulate, that somebody's got to be the bad cop sometimes. So for people who say hedge is good, they say that it is good for things like free trade and the economy. What's a SLOC? Sea lane of communication or sea lane of commerce. And we talked about those a little bit yesterday. Those are the places where, you know, it's usually pretty narrow parts of the ocean where goods need to travel through. So good hegemon will help to do that. So if do you know that there are pirates, not just in Somalia, there are also pirates in an area called the Straits of Malacca? Yeah. There are also pirates, by the way, on the Amazon River, which is kind of weird to know that. So there are these pirates, and the pirates off the coast of Somalia, super disruptive. Have you all heard of that? Okay. Super disruptive trade. The pirates in the Straits of Malacca, also super disruptive. So the U.S., as the hegemon, goes in and tries to help to regulate those blocks by, you know, engaging the pirates if necessary, shooting the pirates if necessary, etc. Questions about that? Okay. The environment. Some people say that a hegemon is necessary to ensure that we have environmental agreements, which is actually related to the next bullet, which is international institutions effectiveness. Now, this is a little bit interesting. Hedge good authors, most of the time, are like, the U.S. should do whatever it wants, whenever it wants. Unless they're trying to answer the hedge bad authors. Because most of the hedge bad authors are like, we should all get along and sing kumbaya and stuff. And so when the hedge good authors are answering the hedge bad arguments on that side, they'll say things like, yeah, but we can't all sing kumbaya unless somebody like starts the song. And U.S. as the hegemon would be super awesome at that. So we'll help international institutions to be really effective. For example, the World Health Organization monitors diseases around the world. If the U.S. was not the hegemon to help to guide that and fund it, then it is the case, people say, that we would not be able to track diseases. And then we would all die from the super viruses. If you're going to like show them stuff, at least like don't turn around. Also, hedge shop tour. Hedge can be bad, in part because it causes asymmetrical warfare. Who can tell me what asymmetrical warfare is? Yeah. Ish. Yeah.
When you don't go like soldier versus soldier, you find other innovative ways to kind of have some bad.
Yeah, so this may blow your mind. The framers of the Constitution and all the people that fought in the U.S. Revolution against the British, they were all terrorists. What? That's even on camera. So what I mean by that is when the Revolutionary War started to happen, the way that wars were conducted is Britain would line up its soldiers and they'd all be in a line. And then the French, for example, would line up their soldiers all in a line, and the first lines would shoot at each other, and the second lines would shoot at each other when the first line was all dead, third line, etc. Are you with me? All right. So when the colonists were like, "Hey, we hate the British, let's have a war," they did not have enough people to line up and fight them that formally. So they hid in the bushes and up on the hills, and they would shoot down on the lines. The British were totally freaked out about this because they said, oh, well, I would make a British accent, but it would sound weird. They would just be like, hey, we can't believe you're doing this. So that's an example of asymmetrical warfare. It is the adoption of techniques that do damage when there is a military superiority that cannot be overcome. The adoption of tactics when there is a military superiority that cannot be overcome through traditional means. So terrorism is asymmetrical warfare. The spike in terrorism, by the way, terrorism existed before Al-Qaeda, but the spike in terrorism, some people argue, is because there's a widening gap between the United States military superiority, America, and everybody else, and so terrorism is on the rise. The acquisition or proliferation of WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, chemical, biological, nuke weapons, that's an example of asymmetrical warfare. So North Korea gets, some nukes, so that if the United States comes to try to invade them and get regime change, that they are able to nuke us. It also may create what's called balancing behavior. Russia and China, not so happy about our current status as the hegemon. If they got together, it could be bad for us, because them together against us, more difficult for us to beat than us trying to fight them individually. And this is probably occurring in this quote. Hedge, for all you payers, hedge is also probably the primary way that we protect capitalist structures. And so hedge may be bad because it perpetuates capitalism as well. And cap is bad. Insert previous discussion. Questions about any of that? So I see on my computer it is 11:30. I do not know if she has any other slides, but she will surely stop talking soon.
Yes.